Hey YouTube, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. Got something new. Maybe super interesting. Maybe stupid by I don't know yet. It's a kind of unboxing video. That's a full metal SCX24 chassis, including axles and gears. This comes nicely packed in a simple box like this and in a bag. So no brand, nothing. And the chassis is already assembled. Does not come with electronics, but does come with rims, not with tires. 4 nice black beadlock rims. Metal bumper. A pinion gear and body mount. It does come with a SCX24 short wheelbase, so as the Betty does have, or the Chevy. But as you can see here, it does come with the Chevy Lynx length, and it seems simply to be a copy of an SCX24 chassis, but everything made out of metal. Of course I will disassemble it now and check gears and everything, and I'm still not sure if that's worth the money. That's not cheap. But then I thought, okay, if you don't want to use the stock electronics of the SCX24 anyway, Chevy is here 130 euros, 150 US dollars about, and what will you spend? Tires, rims, metal links, more metal upgrade parts. So, well, in the end of the video I can tell you if that's worth the money. At least it looks really good so far. Even a pinion is included. Metal beadlock rims. And a metal bumper, quite shiny. Body mount including body clips, large ones. So let's take a closer look. Rims look really nice. Pinion, I have to count the teeth. No brass, metal, and the chassis. Nice shocks. We will see if they can be oil filled. They are quite hard, so maybe softer springs would be fine. Full metal axles, including metal gears inside. Metal central transmission. Metal battery mount. High up, a lot of weight. So let's take a closer look. I will first mount some tires to the nice rims. I intend to use those new Yeah Racing claws, 1-inch claws, medium soft. interested how those work, and then I will start disassembling axle central transmissions. And let's take a look inside, and then I will mount motor electronics. We will see what we can do. So tires mounted, rims are super nice and rather easy to mount. They are very similar to those China rims I did buy recently, but in contrary to most other rims, they don't have socket head screws here inside, but they do have countersunk screws, so those sit flush. Quite nice and also easy to mount. Much easier to mount than Modeler's best friend, the RC 4-wheel drive Steelies, the stamped steel. The small 1-inch rims from RC 4-wheel drive. And by the way, those tires I mounted here now are the new, or I got them new, the Claws by Year Racing. And I also bought the super tiny for scale trucks, the Rock medium tires. Those are those ones which also sit on China beadlock wheels, and I did not succeed mounting those tires, those Year Racing tires, to the Steelies, to the small Steelies of RC 4-wheel drive. So those are RC 4-wheel drive tires. I tried one evening and I did not succeed, but those mount perfectly on those China wheels. Same with the Injora wheels. Probably some of you will also succeed to mount those on RC 4-wheel drive rims, maybe, but I tried forever and didn't succeed. So if you wanna buy the Year Racing tires, think about this. Maybe it's better to buy cheap China wheels, which are 20 bucks or whatever, and they work much easier and perfectly. Let's mount the fourth wheel also. Quite hard shocks, front bumper. And now, before I start disassembling axles, shocks and central transmission, I unmounted the body of the Chevy, and let's compare this chassis now to the SCX24 Chevy chassis, because seems it does copy the Chevy chassis. So if they copied the Chevy chassis, I hope they didn't make the mistakes to exactly copy this chassis, because someone who will buy such an upgrade chassis will probably not want to mount the tiny stock motor and not want to mount the stock servo. So let's see if they thought of this. First of all, if it should be a copy of the Chevy chassis, you see bumper goes downwards, bumper mount, and they mounted the bumper mount then in wrong direction. You could turn this, but that way the Chevy body will not fit. For mounting the body you would have to use this metal holder, but I don't mount it now. And on the rear, this hinge. What do they want us? They seem to want us only mount the body, the Chevy body, with those two screws on the upper side here. That's of course not a good idea, because only two screws will probably not keep up very long. So this hinge here is probably, at least for the Chevy body, not the perfect solution. But let's check if It seems to be exactly the same distance, so probably the plastic body mount of the Chevy will fit into those gaps here, and this hinge part is in vain. So the Chevy has a very high plastic battery mount, and unfortunately they seem to have copied this. So, and if it seems to be sit even a little bit higher, that's weight up there nobody needs. So low center of gravity battery mount would have been much better. And the more important part, did they think of people will probably want to mount barrage motors? Does not seem to be the fact. Here I do have a barrage motor on a SCX24 central transmission, and you see they made exactly what we did not hope they will do. So you will have to either cut the battery mount, you can remove it from here, but then the battery mount will only sit. No, you will have to cut apart if you really want to use this high center of gravity metal heavy battery mount. That's a part to remove, in my opinion. So no barrage motor can be mounted without any modifications. Only the super tiny stock motor can be mounted. And what did they do in front? Can we mount a brushless outrunner, the Surface Komodo? Again, not. We have to remove this plate, and then shocks miss one screw for mounting. Do they? Yes, of course they do. The shocks do. The shock mounts, as all those metal shock mounts, then are only mounted by this screw, and they need the second screw to keep firmly in position. So again, they did not think. And what did they do with the servo mount? Chevy, too short for a Emacs servo, for example. So the Chevy or the original SCX24 needs modification. Let's try an Emacs servo. Will it fit without modifications? Of course not. They didn't even think of this. That's quite a bummer now. I will check this after taking the axles off, because I can't get inside now. But that's really quite a bummer, because they have this beautiful metal servo mount. But exactly as stock SCX24, what do they think? I don't know what Chinese company does produce this chassis. It looks quite awesome, but if someone will spend such a lot of money for an SCX24 upgrade chassis, he will for sure normally not use the tiny stock motor. A high heavy center of gravity battery mount is a thing people immediately change for upgrades. And of course, stock servo normally has to go, and mostly Emacs servos will come or whatever, and they didn't even change this. So they seem to have taken an SCX24 Chevy chassis and copied this without considering that it could have been super easy for them to change those few things to make it for people much easier to upgrade, because that's already an upgrade. But nobody normally will mount original SCX24 electronics in such an upgrade chassis. Well, I will disassemble it now, and then we will take a look at the gears of the axles and of the central transmission. By the way, steering metal is really, really nice. So that's firm, no play as in the original Chevy. Chassis and axles and shafts disassembled. Closer look to the axles or into the axles later. But first let's check this stuff here. They use, as in the SCX24, M1.4 screws, where you need a 1.3mm hex driver and brass hex for the axles, tiny shims for the shocks on the upper position. This looks quite nice, and that's one of those ball joints which sit inside of the links. You see O-rings for dampening, so this looks quite awesome. Let's start with the shocks. The shocks, they look really nice, but they are super, super hard. They are not oil filled, and probably you can't oil fill those. Maybe if you would use an O-ring, don't know. But the problem with the shocks are the springs. Those are super hard. The shocks look very, very similar to this type of shock. Got those from Ali, and those work really nice, and they do come with much, much, much softer springs. Check this and that spring, and I know you can't see it, but it's really hard. I'm doing hard to press the spring. It's super hard, while this one is quite nice. And I will for sure change the springs. I guess those are spare springs of those Ali shocks, and they are much, much softer. No guess what they want with such strong springs. Those are much harder even than the hardest springs that come with those nice shocks, but those have thinner springs in diameter, but even the hardest of those are much softer than those. Shocks are mounted on metal shocks mounts, as you can buy. I did already buy those upgrade parts, so this is nice. And shocks are nice if there wouldn't be it's unbelievable how hard those springs are compared to those shocks. Super easy, and I really have to struggle to press those fully inside. Here's the frame. Nice metal frame with metal parts, as you can buy. You see, I had to open the battery mount to get the central transmission out. Links are no high clearance links, but they are easy to mount and they sit nicely. And you see here, I showed you this joint already. This came out, but the others sit nicely, held by those O-rings. There's nothing to criticize, but heavy, high battery mount, and of course the way the shock mounts are mounted, they need part of this plate. And the central transmission, here seems to be a simple copy of the central transmission of the XL SCX24. It runs nicely, but there's a little bit of resistance. Maybe this stops after some running. Drive shafts metal, really nice quality, so no complaint. Of course the other parts are still on the axles. And if you compare this to an SCX24 central transmission, you see it's absolutely similar, but with metal gears, super nice. I will open it later. And if you think of the original SCX24 central transmission, what's the problem? If you want to use a barrage motor, you know it. And yes, it's true. They again did it. They only made 2 openings to mount the motor. So you will only be able to mount the stock motor, or the one tiny motors, with the screw holes in that way, and not the barrage motor with screws in mirrored position. It's unbelievable. Why did they do this? Why didn't they simply use or make holes as in those metal upgrade plates where you do already holes for both motor types, which work awesome, which are cheap? Here you again will have to make your own holes if you wanna mount a barrage motor. And of course you have the problem with the battery mount, which you will still, and again as in the original SCX24, have to adapt to cut apart. Axles run really smooth, nice. Of course I will disassemble them later. Drive shafts, awesome. Looks absolutely awesome quality. No complaint. As in the front axle, unfortunately dog bone style steering. We will see later after disassembling, but runs nice and smoothly. Steering sits really firm with O-rings. Nice. And now we have the servo mount. And you won't believe it. Yes, it's true. It's not possible to mount an IMAX servo without strong modifications. The IMAX servo even doesn't fit. It's even a little bit too wide. You won't be able to press it in. You can use an MG90. This one will fit. And I will probably use small Savex. They fit too, at least in the front position. Yeah, they fit, but check this out. So why did they do this? It would have been so easy to make a servo mount for upgrade servos. Wouldn't have been more work. Somebody who designed this didn't think. So it's exactly for the original SCX24 stock parts. And worst thing, IMAX servo will not even fit. You would probably have to sand the servo mount quite a bit here on the side. It's impossible to press it in. So what a bummer, what a pity. And now finally, let's take a look into the axles and into central transmission. Let's check the metal gears. So axles and central transmission disassembled, rear axles, front axles and steering, and the central transmission So let's take a closer look. Rear axles, housing, really nicely made. Link mount, gear, worm gear. So all this seems to be of really awesome quality. Drive shaft, shims screws, shafts, of course ball bearings 6x3x2.5 and nice screws. And that's the diff cover, even if there are no diffs inside. And the front axles, steering links, C-hubs, really nicely made. Screws to mount the C-hubs with the kind of shims. Dog bone style steering, unfortunately. Links. Of course, full ball bearing. Again, worm gear, diff cover, and unfortunately the servo mount, which does not fit to an Emax servo, and the axle housing. That's really nice quality. And finally the central transmission. It's more or less a copy of the SCX24 transmission. Really nicely made metal gears. Covers. Everything that's made out of plastic in the SCX24 transmission is made out of metal here. And the pinion, 11-tooth pinion as in the SCX24. So what I will do now, I will reassemble all this and make a running truck out of all of my parts. What's really annoying, that they didn't make a plate like this. You can buy it, you can make it, you can drill your own holes so that you're able to mount a barrage motor if you want. So don't know why they did it that way. Would be not more work to make 2 holes more. That's simply a sign for me that they didn't think about it. They didn't think about what they wanted to make, or to make an upgrade chassis for SCX24 fans who want to buy such a chassis and pay that much. They simply copied an SCX24 chassis. In my opinion, it's totally dumb. This is totally dumb. And the servo mount, it's annoying. It's really annoying, because it would have been so easy and this chassis would have been so much better. Now I'm not sure, probably I'll make a stock chassis and even use for the test drives the original heavy high position battery mount, and we'll mount maybe the original SCX24 motor or one of those other same motors, 88 turn Hobby Plus torque motors, either this one or that one. And so no barrage motor, therefore I would have to cut the battery mount, the plate or the side arms. I don't want to do this yet, so I will probably use the stock or the Archit, no, that's a Hobby Plus 88 turn tiny motor, and also use for the first tests the original plate and won't drill holes. I wouldn't drill holes anyway, because those spare plates are so cheap, and drilling hole is not super difficult, but that's also not the easiest job to get the motor in perfect position, and for a few bucks you can buy those. And yeah, make everything stock and make short test drive. So see you with a running truck. So here it is, finished chassis, and with Chevy body it fits. Assembling worked like a charm. All the gears are really good quality, and everything worked perfectly and runs really smoothly. I did not yet use any thread lock, as they didn't use thread lock either when I got the car. Don't know if it will be necessary. Assembling the links and the axles and drive shafts works like a charm compared to the original SCX24. If you buy upgrade links, that's always a pain in the ass. And this worked awesome, but what I really hate is the servo. You see, I did put a different servo now to the chassis. That's a small full metal gear servo I found, a FRC, quite good values, because even the Savox servos didn't fit in the end. They were kind of awkward. The Tower Pro did fit, but they are that long. But what you can see here, I did already change the position of the bumper so that it's as in the stock SCX24 Chevy. That's a wrong construction, because this bar here blocks with the servo arm, and this servo is already super short, so that's much smaller than a Emax servo or whatever. Probably they didn't think about this. It's unbelievable, because that's a false construction. Of course, it's easy to modify this to cut this bar. You probably don't need it, don't know, but that's quite a bummer. The shocks, the only thing I changed from stock, I removed those super, they are so hard shocks that came with them, and used the spare springs, the super soft spare springs that came with those shocks. But those, and I put some drops of oil into each shock, but now they are maybe even a little bit too soft. You see, that's a kind of droop setup. However, works fine and nicely, but that's quite a bummer. So there was not a lot of thinking when constructing this chassis. How can they do this? Unbelievable. My impressions are B-fold, really. I did build it now totally stock, so I used the tiny motor, did not use the XL SCX24 motor, but the Hobby Plus motor. The pinion is awesome, the metal pinion that came with it, and gear runs smoothly, everything awesome. But why did they do this? So I wanted to make one stock test. I used the metal battery mount, the heavy high up battery mount that came with the chassis. I also mounted the body mount bars now in front, only to test it. They could have changed this so easy, but they did not. Tires, those tires are awesome, and it's a copy of the SCX24 with the false front bumper mount construction. You see, the SCX24 servo is much more in front than the metal chassis servo, but you couldn't use this here either. It would even be worse, because this part is much higher, so what a pity. This makes me angry if you get such nice things and then you see they didn't think about it. But let's make short drive tests to check how it drives. So it runs really smoothly. Even if those are only metal gears, it's not super loud. You see, plastic gears of the Chevy seem even to be louder. Both of those do have an ES126 RW ESC. So that's the only modification of the XL SCX24 Chevy here. This is absolutely stock. Only this awesome tiny ESC sits inside the electronic box. And here the ESC sits here with a PC and a FlyScan micro receiver. But wow, is there a difference in weight? Unbelievable. Let's check the weight, including battery, only without body. The Chevy does have 414 gram, and this is way heavier. 762 grams, so wow, nearly twice as heavy. Let's check the steering angle. The steering angle seems to be a little bit better in the original SCX24 in the Chevy. Check this out. I don't want to drive. Yes, so that's an old problem of all those metal things. Steering angle is worse than in the original one. Oh. But how does it drive? It really runs nice and smooth. As the original Chevy with the ES126. Let's put the Chevy body on it. Will it climb this step? Not that way, but that way, and probably I should. Probably I should use body clips. So, but it can do really steep inclines. Check this out. Maybe I should. Wow. So that's really steep. That's really steep. Is the original SCX24 able to do this too? No. So I'll show this to you again. Change the camera angle that you can see it better. SCX24 Chevy. So Chevy can't do this anymore, and the super expensive metal chassis. It seems it will be able to do it. Yeah. So for sure better center of gravity than the totally stock Chevy When will it fall? A little bit more. Also on side angle. Yeah, I don't know what really to say. That's an awesome chassis. The quality is awesome, and I really would. Yeah, the price is not awesome. The price is horrible. But now this with the servo, and I don't understand why they did this. It would have been so easy to make a really awesome chassis for guys who want to modify their SCX24. So if they would have made a different servo mount that accepts Emacs servo and different servos, but they did not. They made a super tiny servo mount. Okay, hard springs in the shocks, that's not the big thing. And of course, why didn't they make the possibility to mount the barrage motor immediately? Why that? And why this super high, super heavy battery mount? And of course, the front electronics parts plate, again the same thing. If you wanna mount the Komodo motor or the Surpass brushless outrunner motor in front direction, you will have to cut this plate. It would be super nice if one could remove this plate and the shock mounts would still have two positions, two screws to be mounted, so you could do what you want here in front. But we talk about this brushless setup. You did see. You saw those are able to climb this step. Easy, easy cheesy. And also the stock Chevy with the ES12R 6R with the ES12 6RW is easily able to climb this. And now let's last thing. Signal lost. I have to change model. I do have both on the Nobel. So now let's check the outrunner motor. Super slow driving possible. But it's not able to climb this tiny step, so don't know. I think I'm a big fan of the stock XL SCX24. Some wheel weights. Even the shocks are not that bad. It's a beautiful chassis, but it has design flaws because the company that produces it didn't think. They don't know nothing, obviously, about SCX24s. If they would sell this chassis with an awesome battery mount, of course, not with this design flaw, with the possibility to directly mount the barrage motor and maybe with a low center of gravity battery mount, maybe even with high clearance links, then yes, but that way as a direct copy of the SCX24 Chevy, where you have to do all mods you have to do in the original SCX24 in the metal chassis too, then it's probably far too expensive. Nevertheless, it's cool. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next video. I'll be back.